Hi, I'm Eric Lucero with Music Store Live here with Jake Cinninger of Umphrey's McGee at the Observatory North Park in San Diego. The majesty of this beautiful theater. Thank you very much for joining us, Jake. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, guys. Awesome.
Absolutely. So we're here to check out your amazing rig, and you're known for a very expressive tone. So let's start with what's in your hands. You've been playing for G&L for how long now?
Well, my first G&L I'd gotten when I was 13, so that was like about 1991, I believe. So I even went back to when they were only making like the 3-bolt backs, where it was just like a triangle, and now they're doing the 4, but it was only a 3-bolt neck bolt-on back in the day. So it was a Legacy, just black and white, super simple. Kind of reminded me of like Clapton's Blackie Strat a little bit. Oh, wow, okay. And it's a little dinkier, a little smaller, so it felt a little bit more like a late 50s styled body, really small. And then as G&L sort of progressed, the guitars got a little bit more boat anchor like, which meant they were better for the road. They just felt a little bit like there was more fat and ass on the guitar. It just chewed better for the road. And then I eventually started to realize that, well, with all this gain structure that I'm using to get rid of the single coil 60 cycle hum, to switch over to the Comanche Z coil style, which is just super silent, super loud. And it just like, so like I can get like really nice warm like jazz tones, almost like rolled off top. And then I mainly just use the neck here and the bridge. So just to find a beautiful contrast between those. And then like back to the. So they don't compete with each other, but only in a frequency perspective. So that's the secret for me, is to find two pickups that can really match output and not get in the way of each other. They sort of blend well together, even though they're so drastic. Nice. So yeah, that's where the Comanche really pulls that stuff off. And the company made this one for me probably about, I'd say like 3 or 4 years ago, and from their first like custom shop areas. So this is like just a really special guitar, but been played a lot over the last 3 years. So nice. She's broken nicely. So let me move over to the other.
Sure.
This is all a David Brown custom shop, and this was the first one of the year, which is really cool. It's serial number 1801001. So it's the first actual guitar in production for 2018.
Wow.
Which is kind of cool.
Very cool.
To have the serial number locked in. And this was all built on Leo Fender's original lathe, using his original pickup winding system. So he did 3 sets of pickups on Leo's birth date on his original pickup winder. So there was
very
some
cool
little Guitar Mojo secret with, and I think we used like really old wire that was left over from the Fender plant on this. So they were kind of already pre-oxidized, almost like pre-vintaged pickups. Super balanced, awesome, like 20K frequency spectrum, just really juicy stratty sound. And I just recently got this about 2 weeks ago and played it every show over the last 2 weeks. It
Wow.
just like came right out of the box, just like whoa,
just ready to go.
Yeah, and the neck is just so detailed, and it feels literally like a 62. It's got like just the width. This is way heavier, surprisingly. Same swamp ash wood, but this thing is like almost half the weight. It's crazy, nice. Just by how much thinner it is. So it's a little more sexier, a little more stratty-like, and the Comanche is just a little bit more of that boat anchor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's quite a bit of difference in weight there, but these are my 2 main dogs right here.
Nice.
So yeah.
So you've been pretty steadfast on the G&Ls for a long time, and
yeah, that's it, man.
And I've seen you go from S500s to the Comanches.
Yep.
And would you say the main thread has been the evolution in pickups? Because you said the Comanche pickups, the Z coils, cleaned up very nicely in your gain stages.
They do, and they're super loud. So I love hitting the front of the amp really hard. So it's kind of doing that for me without using a lot of boosts elsewhere. So just to have that right out of the guitar, just a ton of electricity just coming right out of that cable, just kind of makes sense. And these are really loud too. Also, there's no shielding in here, so we're getting like full sonic spectrum.
Really, that's a rare thing for a lot of the big single coil guys to have no shielding at all in the cavity.
Surprisingly quiet. I just think the quality of this guitar exceeds a lot of others, and just the wiring and everything. It's just a quiet, awesome Strat.
Nice.
So, and I was kind of scared walking into each night. You never know what you're going to get with like the hum or wherever electrical war zone you're in. One night it'll be, in between every pedal boost.
Yeah.
None of that.
Well, let's move on and check out this really cool pedal board and see what's been updated since last time many of us have seen Jake's pedals.
Yep.
So now on to this pedal board, which has seen some evolution over the years, and I see some changes from the last I've seen. So how about we do a little run through of what you're running these days?
Yeah, as far as the actual signal chain, so pretty much out of the guitar we go right into this Pedalboards.com is the guy. I think he's like upstate New York. He builds these babies out of his garage, like military spec wiring. It's just real simple, crack tight, great for tour. Metal. There's nothing plastic here. When I'm stomping on this thing, we're gonna have problems over 150 shows if it's not metal, right? So we've been using these for probably 15 years. So these things are great. Pedalboards.com, and basically going into number one, channel one's always on, and that's my Fuchs plush compressor up here. So that's basically always on. I run the level all the way up, quite a bit of compression. If I shut it off, there's like that much gain. It's
Wax you like a brick.
Yeah, so I can really punch the note, and it's like that juicy compression is just going boom to the front of the amp.
Absolutely.
With a ton of gain also. So, and then second is this Source Audio Vertigo tremolo, which is, it's kind of got like a sitar wah 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 to it. So
it's a harmonic tremolo, isn't it?
Kind of
Very
cool, not
nice.
like your normal trem sort of vibe.
Yeah.
It's got a bias, normal, and harmonic sort of option on it, and you can juice the level, which is normally not on a trem when you have a level option to push the effect a little harder.
So no level drop issues. You can set it for where you need each night.
Yeah, because sometimes when you plug into these, you notice a decrease in the output. So it's nice to have that little line booster, and I'm juicing it.
Yeah.
Just like Chris Lord algae techniques, just turn everything up. Trust me.
Studio on the stage.
Exactly,
I like it.
Yeah. Because I'm a studio guy, anyways. So like, having a studio back home, it's like that ethos kind of automatically ends up on stage.
Right on.
So after the tremolo, we have the new radial hot British distortion,
Nice.
the tone bone, which I was using a classic for a while, the blue one, but I'm using this on a super low gain setting. And
Wow.
it's got this really nice Britishy, like Marshall rectifier sort of top, and it sounds like an amp head. That's what I like about these things.
And there is a preamp tube in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a 12X7 in there, but it really acts almost like a little mini head, like a little hot plate or something like that, with all these cool notches, bright, fat, and then out. So I'm boosting the fat and the bright.
Nice.
I got really goofy settings, but it seems to work,
So a little bit of a smile curve of an EQ, but
Exactly.
it's what helps you get that definition.
Yeah, where you can kind of get that Metallica. With like clarity, without like fuzz.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of fuzz, that would be my next gain stage, which is this custom HME fuzz bucket,
Wow.
which I've had for about 15 years. And this is like the David Gilmour fuzz, kind of. So it's got all these
Very nice.
super deep, rich harmonics, and then you can get that Eric Johnson sort of clarity out of the. You can really feel the pick attack very well, so it kind of goes kunk before this like nice violin or cello-like tone happens. So some fuzz pedals sort of get jumbly and sort of a little too fuzzy, if you ask me. So this sounds like a female voice to me. It's got that woo with the crunch on top, you know.
It is very vocal, and it seems to have a bit of clean blend through, so maybe something a little more vintage than a big muff, a little bit more clarity in it.
Yeah,
I love
it's
the
a little
sound
bit
of
more
it.
control. Yeah, and it does have that sort of, you put like the like a phaser on, you can get that real so you can kind of get
Very
that like
cool.
with the like of the pedal. So classic Gilmore. Everyone loves Gilmore. Everyone chases that tone. So that's my secret sauce.
Right
So after 4 we got 5, and that would be my Moger Foger 104M delay, which is one of the original first 50 made. So I just kind of use it for a subtle. It doesn't regenerate like a digital delay. It's got this nice soft, sort of analog masking. It sort of gets more degenerated as the delay goes on, which is what I wanted to do. Not get in the way of my initial note, just kind of be a ghosting thing.
So it's a analog delay that allows you to have a bit more degree of control, allowed to blend into your runs, because you still sound
You're like my notes are going to be on top, and the delay notes are pushed far back. Almost when I stop, that's when it's heard. When I'm playing, they're not really coming through. Yeah, just a little goblins after the note. So okay, then after the Moger Foger, we have the Mindbender BBE chorus, which is super rad. One of Will Ray's designs with BBE and G&L, same guys, same company.
Yeah.
And so this thing's just a monster. You get these really, you can do like the Def Leppard, like. Or the Dream Theater.
There you go.
So it gives you like all those like cool spooky 80s things. For like muted picking, clean stuff like that. As a nice sort of like Leslie rotating on slow sort of vibe. But this thing gets wicked. Check this out. You can get this like nice. I mean, it's just nauseating. It's great.
Reminds me of like a Soundgarden sort of Kim Thayil sort of sound.
You can just get kind of wicked. But I mean, for a 2-knob chorus, this is really one of the best pedal chorus effects I've ever came across. It's just really powerful, and what's great, like most choruses, your tone drops. When you turn it on. This does not do it. It's the same. If anything, it's a little louder. Check this out. Nice. It's like 2 dBs hotter coming out naturally, which is a good thing.
And I mean, if you want to use a chorus, you want it to get heard, which bums me out about some I've gotten before where there was that volume drop.
And you end up not using it as much because you want it to take over. And if it's chorus, you're taking out frequencies. So the pedal has to be naturally a little louder, I think. So this is a secret sauce chorus pedal for sure.
Very cool.
And then, channel 8 is especially... we're on 7 now. Sorry. 7 is the Super Shifter. This Source Audio sound block modulator, sort of I use it on like a phaser vibe thing, and it goes into this Maliko fuzz, and then it goes into this super old Gaiatone mini delay, digital delay that I've had for 23 years.
Nice.
That's my original one.
And these are great for oscillation.
Oh,
We're just
yeah,
getting some
just
crazy
creepy
sounds out of
stuff.
them.
So I use this for, this is one of my tones that I use like on Bad Friday. Like it's like. So it's got the almost like the 12 string kind of. So I use it for a lot of muting stuff for like. Cool effect,
sounding.
yeah. So with a lot of the natural sediment being in like only like a lower register, this kind of helps the melodies sort of cut through. Yeah. Now, so in the chain I have this Maliko, so I use the same sort of effect, but now we're gonna add like a ton of fuzz and get like a.
Very synth-like attack decay sort of stuff available
so
with
it's
that.
Like I'll use this for like a longer toned sort of melody solo or something that I want to be like vocal like. I'll use like this sort of signal chain, and then for like the solo stuff, the single distortion boxes. But this is kind of like a work in progress. I always like changing which one's in place of the other, and this seems to work for me.
So that's your fun land up there,
yeah,
the
yeah,
bypass
keep
loop
that
7.
stuff far away on the top. Okay, so then number 8 is the classic Boss phase shift.
All right.
Which is like, just finding that right sweet setting where it's kind of like the Steely Dan phase. There's like a certain tempo that works just right. Like Snake Charmer tempo or something.
Where you don't have to worry about having to reset the speed.
Yeah,
You can just sit on it.
This is my setting. You just leave it there. That's been my setting for this pedal for 20 some years. So it's like that never changes. So that simple's effective.
Yeah.
And not toying with your stuff too much and just leaving it, then you have your sound. If you keep on toying with stuff over the years, you're never going to have your fingerprint sound. So once you find something, you just stick with it. So that one's never changing. Right. All right. So now we have this is cool. This is at the end of the chain, which is kind of weird. It's a Cold Fusion overdrive that I just use as a mid-range boost. It gives me a little bit more like 250, 500K frequencies. So if I'm using a Strat and I want a little bit more Les Paul, I get this sort of pedal. It knocks off some of the sheen of the pickup and smooths out my line. So say without it, it's like with it. Really subtle like bloom in the low end, just kind of helps the Strat pick up out a little bit. Kind of punches a little bit more.
It's funny you mentioned the mid-range of it, because that almost is the effect of like having a mahogany body like a Les Paul, is having that added mid-range with the with density in there.
So it's cool. I'm kind of in search of that Les Paul tone inside the Strat world, and kind of trying to find both of those sounds in one guitar, which is like the hardest thing to do. It's always the lifelong search, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. And then before everything, it's obviously the Bad Horsey. I forgot to mention that. The wah is always first, right, in the chain, and then it goes into the compression. So that is included with one, is the Bad Horsey wah.
Oh, so
which is
these two are in one line then?
yeah.
Okay.
So those two are together. Which is great about the Bad Horsey. You just step and go. There's no like clicking on, with the Bad Horsey. It's automatically on.
Nice.
Which is the beauty. Okay, and this goes into my second rig, Pedalboard, little guy. And this just basically starts to separate from my 2 amps. This is just a lead boost. So it's just it's a plush overdrive by Fuchs. Just gives me like 3 dB more of gain. So I've got all these different gain structures that I can be subtle with, and maybe not have to use the volume as much. And this is really cool. This is called a steel guitar black box. It's almost like a mastering lab for your guitar. So it's got like this little tube buffering circuit in there, and it knocks down like weird frequencies in like 5,000 to like 8,000 shrill harmonics. So it's got this little attenuator where you can push or pull back some of these like harsh frequencies.
So it's a little bit of a buffer and wrangler for
Yeah.
like high transient stuff that would
Exactly.
ice pick the audience.
Yeah, yes. And with the Strat, naturally, you're going to have a few of those problems. And even Bayless is using the black box. He loves it too. And Secret, Nashville, all the Nashville cats use this in the studio. So that's like super. Not too many people know about these, which is cool. Okay, and then obvious Boss tuner. And then most of these pedals are all for the Schroeder and Fuchs, which is my clean side. And then right at the end, we have the Oldfield. And this is just like a little bit of a boost to hit my distorted amp.
Okay.
So, and then just an A-B to go back and forth from the Schroeder Fuchs to the Oldfield side. So we got our hot side and our cool side, basically.
Nice. Let's check out your amplifiers now.
So over here we have the ODS Fuchs 100 watt Supreme. This is a great amp, kind of a Dumble clone. Use this mainly for clean. This is kind of a backup right now. Today I'm using the Schroeder that's made in Chicago, Illinois. This thing is crazy. It's got probably like $5,000 worth of just cabling in it, like
Wow.
gold braided, awesome cable. So it's almost like a Macintosh hi-fi amplifier that we're just running a guitar through. And what I've noticed about the Schroeder stuff is that when you plug into it, it like takes whatever guitar you have and just makes it sound brilliant, because it like comb filters and finds problem areas and spits out just a pure sound. It's really intense. So I can just get these huge, fat, juicy tones, and I'm barely touching the string. I mean, it's just boom, boom, and that's what it's sort of soaking the electricity and turning it into magic. I don't know how he does it. So back here, I'm using these audience power cables, which it's like this gargantuan power source going into the Schroeder, and it cleans up all the electricity going into this amp. So having like a really good 3-pronged power cable just running in, it has almost half to do with half of the great tone is in that electricity going in. So, I mean, the audience products are amazing. So we use like a lot of their power conditioning cables for some of the raunchier sounding pedals, and it just gives a super clean zap of electricity. Nothing in the way, gold, everything. So really, really rely on that for the proper tone night after night, is just the power cable, which is kind of a secret, right?
Right.
No one thinks about the power cable, you know. So, and then we're going into a Schroeder cab with Schroeder custom speakers, which they're kind of voiced like a little bit kind of like a Celestion meets an Electro Voice. Like, remember those tough Electro Voice speakers that the metal guys used to use, like Zakk Wylde, all those guys, because they could just turn them up and they would never blow up. And love those. So that's the clean side. And then as we motion over to this side, it's the 57 Chevy Brontosaurus, the Oldfield. This is a one-of-a-kind JC100, he calls it. And we kind of talked over the phone of what I was looking for. I was looking for a Marshall that made a Strat sound like a Brontosaurus.
Nice.
That was sort of what I was going for. It was like, okay. And then
That's a great description.
yeah, and then we ended up getting this baby, and it just sizzles and stomps. So I'll just turn it on real quick. So it's super throaty. It's got this awesome throat for Strat, you know. But then it's really precise picking. It's not too too much overdrive. It's more just hitting the front of the amp hard. You can kind of hear it struggling, you know.
It sounds to me a little bit like you kind of had him take the like JCM sort of preamp section, but plugging it into that high headroom sort of sound that you've been going for on the other side of it, and combining those two worlds together.
It's kind of the secret to the sound, and finding kind of my voice too, is pushing an amp a little differently than the next guy, and then getting kind of a different result. And that's been the secret to the sauce since day one. And it's great to have relationships with the builders. It's really has a lot to do with the end result, and years of trial and error and research and development. So I'm kind of like a guinea pig for a lot of these guys. So it's an honest to goodness feeling when you get something that really works, and it's kind of a one-of-a-kind beast.
And it looks great on stage, and it pops out under all the lights for sure, yeah, with that look on it.
Well, as in rock and roll, they always say, it's better to look great than to sound great. So.
That's right. I had a couple questions for you. So I noticed that your rig as a whole is, you described a very Dumble-like sound, a high headroom, a lot of mid-range push, but still retaining presence. What led you to defining that sort of sound for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I guess going back and thinking of some of my favorite guitar sounds, I really like that Larry Carlton breakup sound, and he was using a Dumble, like Robin Ford Dumble, like Lowell George Dumble, especially with Lowell George's sense of using compression with a Strat. It just sounded like the guitar was like right in your face. Sonny Landreth, his tone Dumble, is like, oh my God, like holy sound.
So you've taken the approach of almost a component system, kind of like you mentioned on the Hi-Fi, of different preamps, different gain stages to equal that.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though like that Overdrive Supreme, which is your custom one, correct?
Yes, it is.
The layout's pretty similar, I mean,
with the notch filters and everything. Yep. I mean, these two amps really sound quite similar, and that's what I like about them. So if one happens to go down, we got that other one right behind it, ready to go. So.
Very cool.
And plus, it looks good.
Yeah, right. Has to look good on stage. So, what's in the power section of the Schroeder? 6L6s?
No, I think KT66s.
Oh, even better. Yeah,
just like big dogs.
Absolutely.
And there's no distortion on this. It's just a clean amp. You just plug straight in and go, and that's what's great about it. It really takes two pedals really well and makes them sound like distortion head distortion.
I had two questions. I wonder if you could kind of give advice to our viewers. Gain stages is very important. It's a tough concept to kind of wrap your head around.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for players out there looking to explore gain staging on their own pedal board or with amps, and how to approach it?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely start with a clean tone. I like to have almost a little bit of distortion. So when you start adding your distortion pedals, you're not like, whoa, this is too much distortion. It's going to be too much. So the idea is to push your clean sound like it's on the verge of AC/DC distortion. I mean, it's pretty rocking going right into the amp. And then start to blend in your distortion pedals, but turn everything way back. You're going to find that you're going to be barely using the distortion pedals like you used to if you hit the front of the amp in the clean stage hard. Turn on the distortion pedals, you got a totally different ball of wax that you're working with. So then pull everything back and then start to find where and try to use less distortion, just enough to get away with it feeling right. People use too much distortion these days, if you ask me, just to kind of cover up things, and it just makes everything sounding worse. If you can't hear like the air between the notes, pull back the distortion a little bit. Word of the wise kind of thing.
Good advice.
And then if you're having trouble with like buzz, put a little Rocktron gate at the end of it. Sometimes that always helps for the frustrating Strat player that needs a distortion, know. So it's like sometimes that always works. And then at the end of the day, it's really all in the hands and muting, like how you control what happens in between your notes. Like I like to lift my fingers off the fretboard. So I'm ensuring there's no sound in between the notes. Kind of piano-like or keyboard-like. So
very very controlled muting without using your palm,
Yeah.
all in the left hand.
So I'm kind of saving energy and picking my fingers up when I'm done with a phrase. So sometimes little things like that just clear up a whole issue, a lot of issues of just clarity, you know. So just little tricks over the years that are the small tricks are the ones that matter, you know. It's like,
true.
you know, getting rid of old habits, bad habits, and this and that. You know, everyone's trying to do that.
Well, one last question, because you're a big open power stage amp guy, and that is a popular thing right now. Plenty of makers out there still making big clean headroom tube amps. So when it comes to the studio, how do you harness your stage tone and keep it true to the way that you sound in the studio? When it's kind of tough to open up a Fuchs or a 100-watt tube amp in general and really get that stage sound.
You know, it's weird. I use in the studio completely different guitars and completely different amps, but when I come out here, I use these. So it's really weird. I think at the end of the day, the tone is in your hands. So I mean, I'm using like small amps in the studio, but achieving large sounds. So it's like, it's kind of how you go about it, and trust in your ears and your hands, and you'll know when it's working. But it's like, I feel like I can kind of almost plug into anything and I still sound the same. That's the secret to the sauce. Like, everyone wants to get to that part, you know, and I get it 30 years later, you end up with it, you know. I think that's the secret to the sauce, is like, it's really all in the hands, and your voice will sound the same through every amp, every kind of amp. And that's what I was told, and that's what I try to achieve, I guess, at the end of the day. It's like Mr. Miyagi guitars, like, well, that was the lost question we forgot about, you know?
Yeah, right.
You know? But yeah, that's how I get my sound every day, is actually just think about it all comes right out of the hands, and then reacting to the amp, rather than, you know, using a pedal to try to find the sound or find my sound.
Gotcha. That's very, very good advice. Don't rely solely on your gear. It calls all from your playing, your technique, and control over what you're doing.
Exactly.
Right on. Well, Jake, thank you very much for joining us. I'm stoked for the show tonight. And check out G&Ls more like this at Music Store Live. We have the world's largest selection of G&L guitars. Check them all out at MusicStoreLive.com. And you can also check out other stuff that Jake's using, such as the radials and Boss and Source Audio effects on MusicStoreLive.com. Again, thanks for joining us, and get their latest album, It's Not Us, at your local record store.